Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our journey, our discussions, and our explorations with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2021. That brings us to the release of a title that had been in the Criterion Collection previously in an earlier released DVD, but now we see it re-emerge into the collection at long last. This was a title, and is a title, that is designated at spine number 107, and this is a film from 1986. The filmmaker, the director, is Neil Jordan. And the name of the work is Mona Lisa. This is the work from 1986, and it is from the director Neil Jordan. And among its incredible cast are, for example, Bob Hoskins and Kathy Tyson and Robbie Coltrane and Michael Caine and others. This is that very emotionally rich and very surprising and heartfelt film that can be described as being one of many different genres, but all combined with a singular focus and drive and propulsion forward in this very compelling story. This is the work which is Mona Lisa. Now, as I say, this can be a film that can be described as being many levels and many layers. And I think one way to identify this or to recognize this is to see the various plot strands or elements that can be seen to be established vis-a-vis the main character of this particular work, that is the character of George, played by Bob Hoskins in an incredible performance. So we have the main character of George, and we understand at the very start of the film that he is returning to civilized society, to a sense of normalcy. And we also realize very early on that he seems to be returning to such normalcy or normal life after having served a long prison sentence. And he is returning. So in this establishment already set up at the very start of the film, we see a number of levels to George's story, which will then develop over the immediate course of the narrative going forward. So one of those levels is his relationship with the character of Mortwell, played by Michael Caine. And we also see that this leads to maybe some kind of hinting of the past and what it was or what it could have been that led to the incarceration to begin with. There are some hints at some kind of maybe underworld connection or a type of connections to criminal life or lifestyle. And we understand, therefore, on a general level, in terms of the metaphorical or perhaps representational aspects of the character of Michael Caine's Mortwell, we understand that his presence has this type of charm and menace to it, and which makes therefore his existence in the context of George's life a very important one. And we understand as we watch the film, it becomes very significant in terms of the drive of this plot that involves this type of maybe ambiguous and nuanced connections to something of the seedy underworld of sorts. And so that's one area or level of this film as a type of maybe pulp fiction story of the shady underbelly of the nightlife of London as portrayed or in the context of the relationship between Mortwell and George. So that's one aspect. Another aspect that is very much part of George's story is his attempts at trying to establish or reestablish relationships with his own family, in particular his daughter. And again, because George has been away for so long, he has essentially become estranged. And we see him trying through direct attempts at connection, as well as through trying to, maybe through various means, maybe in a sense trying to better himself as a human being. We see that George is somehow trying to make such connection. And that becomes also one of the sources of a type of emotional character arc that we see George trying to experience throughout the course of this film. And so we have therefore a type of plot dynamic with his interactions with the Michael Caine character, and you also have an emotional dynamic that seems to be established vis-a-vis his relationship with his estranged family, in particular his young daughter. And related to that emotional arc, we also see George's character in trying to essentially get back to the normal life. And we see part of this, or a very interesting aspect of this, exemplified in the relationship with the Robbie Coltrane character. And there is a type of friendship there. There is also a sense of humor, and George trying to understand certain aspects of maybe this new life that the Robbie Coltrane character is essentially trying to teach him through this relationship or friendship. There's a means by which George, the Bob Hoskins character, is essentially able to rehabilitate himself into this new civilized society. And so this is a part of, or a significant component of, what can be said to be the grand character arc of George on an emotional level. And this is, I think, very much part of what we can say about this film as a very emotionally driven noir love story. And we get the noir aspects, as I say, from the Michael Caine component of the story, and we get the emotional drive from these family-related arcs and the relationships that he has with other friends and associates. And I also mentioned love story. And this is also very key component. And this brings us to yet another level of how this film propels itself forward. Now, we mentioned the character of Michael Caine and the underbelly, if you will, or the nightlife, the noirish landscape of London that's being portrayed. Now, part of that that we see in this film is in the relationship between George and the character of Simone, played by Kathy Tyson. And perhaps it is this relationship between George and Simone that forms a type of heart and soul anchor to the film. Now, in terms of a plot, we understand that George is essentially tasked to be the driver, the driver of Simone, who is a prostitute. And she is essentially having to go to various clients in hotels or other residences and the like. And George is the one who is assigned to take him from place to place to place. And it is through this particular plot development that we see the relationship between Simone and George develop. And when we understand all these other elements that are part of George's life that we see in other aspects of the film, his attempts to get back to, with his family and with his daughter, that emotional arc that he's trying to achieve, the noirish elements that we see elsewhere, we see all this at once. And while all this is going on, you see something very special happening. There is a type of emotional bond that seems to be forged and being created as between George and Simone. Or perhaps, to be even more specific, we get the impression that from George's perspective, he is beginning to have certain types of feelings or emotions in the context of his relationship with Simone. And in that, we see further developments, both on an emotional level and on a type of noir, film noir plot development level. And we also see, therefore, the mystery elements that come into play in this type of noir love story dynamic, because part of the story is the character of Simone and what it is that her motivations are, and how her relationship with the George character, the Bob Hoskins character, how that relationship is significant in terms of Simone's motivations and what it is she is trying to do and who it is she's trying to connect with over the course of this film, and how George is affected by this, and how his emotional attachment with Simone becomes affected by this. And all of this is going on all at once. All these plot threads are going on all at once until seemingly they seem to converge or collide or intersect in a very compelling and sometimes suspenseful and very emotionally involving way that makes this film so absorbing and so magnetic and so hypnotic. And when the film is over, it becomes so unforgettable. And the echo of the songs in the air and the feelings and the images, both direct and also quite mysterious. They can be as simple as a walk along the pier or as enigmatic as a white rabbit. But in any event, we have all of these combined here to, as I say, form a multi-tiered story that is a noirish, suspense-driven film that is also a love story, that is also an emotional journey with this character played by Bob Hoskins front and center. It is a remarkable film indeed. I mentioned Bob Hoskins, and I should mention that his performance, as I alluded to earlier, is magnificent, as are the performances of the other key performers here. Kathy Tyson, wow. Michael Caine, wow. It's just a wonderful gathering of performances, each bringing their A game to this surprising and mysterious and also very, very involving work indeed, Mona Lisa. And I should say too that there is a real look to the film that is magnetically charged. We have certain scenes that might seem to be shot in a way that suggests a type of new society, new London, and we see the conflict or the contradictions that a character like George, the Bob Hoskins character, brings, and we see a type of maybe unease, a mismatch. Sometimes that mismatch can be in the form of wardrobe or fashion choices of George. Sometimes it's in his demeanor, in his rough type of brutish sort of manner, and he doesn't necessarily mean any ill will by this. It's just the type of person that he is, and so there is an almost an affable charm that is automatically associated with a type of rough-edged nature to the Bob Hoskins George character, and so that makes his character, I think, even more charming and thus more sympathetic to us, the viewer. And that is, I think, one of the key aspects of his magnificent performance. And also the great performances I mentioned. Michael Caine brings a steely sense of charm and menace and danger, and a type of explosiveness that could be charged at any moment. And there's an anger there and a power and authority that Michael Caine brings to the table all the time. And I also have to mention too, Kathy Tyson as Simone. This is, as I say, one half of that key dynamic relationship that carries the film between Bob Hoskins and Kathy Tyson, their characters. And so her performance is so crucial. And wow, what a performance it is, because she brings that perfect blend and balance of a type of air of mystery. There's also a sense of command and control. There are some wonderful scenes of camaraderie and rapport between Simone and George, where in essence Simone is teaching George about certain aspects about how to dress, how to act, how to behave, which is very much part of or key to or very much critical to what it is that they're trying to do, which is this type of prostitution, but visiting various clients at various places that requires a sense of a professional type of look, or a high-class type of look. And so Simone is teaching the maybe rough around the edges character of George all these very critical details to the success of this particular endeavor. And so there is a type of command and control to the character of Simone, which is so key. There's also a sense of vulnerability and a sense of a type of sensitivity to her performance, because we understand what her emotional stakes are and what her interests are in the context of the film. And also we understand too that this makes that dynamic relationship between her and George so myriad, with number, maybe an almost infinite number of possibilities as to where that relationship can go. It is so dynamic and powerful, awesome and amazing. And so Kathy Tyson here is splendid, absolutely splendid. And then the look of the film, again, the way that London is shot, I mentioned earlier, there's a type of New World look to it, but it also has the nightlife presented in almost this Dante-esque, inferno-like atmosphere. King's Cross in particular is shown in these dark, long shadows with flames and fire, etc. And so this is also a very stylized approach to the shots of nightlife. And also we have the echoes and the beauty and charm and poetry of Nat King Cole and other notes of music that seemingly fly through the atmosphere of the film. And this also gives the film that further edge of memorable charm and emotional gravitas and weight, and ultimately a strong sense of presence and power, and a long-lasting effect that truly is long-lasting even after the film ends. What a film this is, my dear friends. This is the work Mona Lisa. The Criterion Collection has this year released this film, Mona Lisa, on this new Blu-ray. And this is purported to be based on a 2K digital restoration supervised by Neil Jordan and director of photography Roger Pratt. And it looks great. It is 1.85 to 1 aspect ratio, and it looks and sounds really wonderful indeed. I should mention too that, as I say, Criterion had released this on an earlier DVD, which then fell out of print, which is right here. But again, we have the title re-emerging in the Criterion Collection, so well done for being able to do that. I must say that there we can make a number of comparisons in terms of what was also included with the supplements here versus what we have newly introduced here. I should say that this DVD presentation I thought was really good, but I am very much a fan of this Blu-ray, so well done for Criterion for being able to do this. It looks and sounds great. Now, speaking of the new release, we also have a number of supplements. Some of them, we shall see, are ones that we have seen in past releases, including that from the earlier Criterion DVD, but some are new. And so let's go through these one at a time. The first item is the commentary track from 1996, and this is from Neil Jordan and Bob Hoskins. And this commentary track could be found on a number of past releases of this film, Mona Lisa, including, I might say, the earliest DVD release of this. So we're getting this commentary track once again, but it's really good to have, even on this new Blu-ray release. It is really good to have because it's a great commentary track. We have Neil Jordan speaking, and then Bob Hoskins speaking. They're not talking, say, together, or it's not like a conversation, between the two of them, but rather their comments are given, or one person's comments are given and another person's comments are given, and they are essentially edited together to create this commentary track. And so sometimes we'll get Neil Jordan's comments, and then suddenly we'll get Bob Hoskins' comments. and the like. So, but they are very much blended and balanced very well to create an overall wonderfully effective commentary track. It's really great. Neil Jordan, for instance, speaks in some instances about his background, his background in terms of literature and writing, and also what it was that inspired him to want to be a filmmaker in the first place, and also the artistic process, the creative process that led to Mona Lisa, the film. And he speaks, for instance, about his relationship in terms of the screenplay with his artistic relationship with David Leland, for instance. And David Leland we will see mentioned in another supplement. But we also understand that there were also other aspects from his point of view, how he wanted to portray London. I mentioned earlier the idea that sometimes we see the nightlife of London, in particular King's Cross, which is a very key environment of the film in terms of the prostitutes and the drive that George does with his car with Simone in the back seat. And Simone seems to be looking for something or looking for someone, perhaps roaming the streets as a prostitute in this particular part of London. Who knows? But in any event, these shots of London are shown in a very stylized way. And Neil Jordan makes reference to the fact he wanted to portray a type of hellish world that might serve as a type of stand-in or metaphor for the type of story that he was trying to tell, and the type of emotional consequences that are associated with this. And also other aspects of the commentary track that are fascinating are, for instance, the casting process. This is also something where I think Bob Hoskins' comments are really fascinating. Among his comments, for instance, he describes, Bob Hoskins does, his working relationship with Kathy Tyson, who was, at the time, a newcomer when it came to making or acting in a work of cinema. And so Bob Hoskins was talking, I think, in really astute and wonderful terms about what it was, his relationship on set and working with Kathy Tyson, who brought with her to the performance a lot of energy and electricity and excitement, which really, as I say, drove that performance and was really key component in establishing the heart and soul of the film. That is that relationship between Simone and George. And so those comments, I think, are really great. Also then, returning to Neil Jordan, he describes or alludes to certain details of the shoot, the meaning of the white rabbit as an example, what that means, what that suggests, what that signifies, and why that came about. And that's a really great passage as well. And I think also Bob Hoskins makes reference to this. There's also mentionings of Robbie Coltrane and Michael Caine and their performances, what it was they brought and the energy they brought to the production. So it's all in all a really splendid commentary track. It is from some years back, but please don't let that stop you from listening to the commentary track as you're watching the film, especially if you haven't heard the commentary track. It is one of the best, and so I'm glad it's carried over. And it continues to be made available through a number of releases, including this most recent one from Criterion, this Blu-ray. So please check out the film with the commentary track if you can. As I say, it's well worth it, very well worth it. But that's not all, because then we get a number of supplements with this work, or with this particular release, as we've come to expect from the great people at Criterion. So the first of these is approximately 29 minutes. And this is from 2021, so very recent. It is a type of an online Zoom call, I think, between Neil Jordan and Kathy Tyson, and also moderated by Ryan Gilbey. And we will see his name again appear in connection with this particular release. We'll mention him later. But this is a great conversation, a really, really great conversation in particular between Kathy Tyson and Neil Jordan, and we get a number of wonderful, say, questions directed to each. For instance, Kathy Tyson talks about her start in this film, how she ended up playing Simone, and it was Neil Jordan also who makes reference to seeing her in a stage play, and that being the inspiration for him to want to cast her in this key role of Simone. So it's wonderful to get those impressions and stories. And in fact, Kathy Tyson, what a charming interview that she gives. There's some moments where she says, "I am now remembering." I'm paraphrasing. She's saying how I am now remembering now what is going. So it's almost like the memories are coming back to her as she is speaking, and that is such a wonderful moment of the interview, I think. She also mentions about how she recently rewatched the film Mona Lisa, and she was struck by how funny it was and the levels of comedy that she recognized in this recent viewing. And I thought that was a great thing to remind us of, because this is also in many ways a type of comedy. There are many funny scenes. For instance, the Bob Hoskins character and how he dresses and what he thinks posh clothes are and that sort of thing. And so there are many other, I think, sources of possible humor, like the spaghetti and all that. So that's really wonderful of Kathy Tyson to remind us of that extra element or additional element to this already multi-leveled film. So that's a great aspect of this particular discussion. Also, when we're talking about Neil Jordan and his approach and his style, again, there's reference made to how difficult it was, according to his words, how difficult it was to depict London, and how London was a certain type of paradigm or series of villages, in Neil Jordan's own words. And so it was a means by which he could portray maybe different aspects of the city and different characteristics of the city. And then speaking of characteristics in depicting the environment or landscape, there's also mention of Brighton, the boardwalk, and there's a very famous component of the film involving the boardwalk and the walk and sunglasses, and the use of sunglasses, in particular with Bob Hoskins and Kathy Tyson, and the shape of the sunglasses and what that meant at a very key emotional moment. Sunglasses, in a very ironic way, hiding the eyes in a moment of heightened emotion where one might expect to see the eyes, but they are hidden. At the same time, there is a type of strong emotional dynamic that is taking place between the two characters. So the discussion between these participants in the context of this and other scenes is really wonderful. And also there's this discussion, again, Kathy Tyson and Neil Jordan make reference to the fact that at the time she was inexperienced when it came to making films. And so Neil Jordan speaks about how he wanted to work with her given this particular background that she had. And also Kathy Tyson talks about her relationship with Bob Hoskins, and it's a wonderful set of compliments and comments that complement the comments that Bob Hoskins can be heard making in the commentary track from '96 that, again, is part of this particular release. So that's one. And also Neil Jordan talks about handmade films and working with, for instance, George Harrison, and how George Harrison seemed to be pretty much hands-off, giving Neil Jordan and company pretty much a carte blanche or a type of freedom to make the type of film that they want. There were certain conversations that were had between Harrison and Neil Jordan, according to Neil Jordan, but nothing too intrusive. So that's another very interesting detail. Also, there's a discussion about Michael Caine, also a discussion of Bob Hoskins and the power of Bob Hoskins' performance. I like how it's described. Bob Hoskins and his performance was able to portray George, who is a type of inarticulate common man, in the words of Neil Jordan. Bob Hoskins was able to portray such an inarticulate common man and was able to give such character speech and the ability to express himself. And I thought that was a really an apropos comment that was. What a brilliant way to describe it. And that's such a brilliant way to describe the character of George. Well done, well done. There's also discussion of the white rabbit, what it signifies, what it represents. It's a very mysterious aspect of this film. What is this white rabbit? What does this mean? But again, that discussion is also part of this great conversation. And also they talk about the attempts and the various concerns that were involved in portrayal of black characters, and and Simone, and what Kathy Tyson, what she felt and how she felt about this particular portrayal. And she does mention this in this conversation, and how this there were maybe some concerns on the one hand, but also Kathy Tyson reveals that she knew that this was for her a very powerful story, because it was always about, the focus was always about the characters and the emotion, and how these were human beings. And so I thought that was a really interesting turn that this conversation took. And Kathy Tyson's comments, I thought, were very fascinating indeed. And also there is an interesting way that the participants talk about maybe there could be some room for what happens afterwards. What are the stories of these characters after the end credits roll? And so that's also very interesting aspect as well. So for these and other reasons, my friends, this is a very fascinating, rich, and I think quite it's a conversation that goes in and oftentimes very detailed and very complex territory, but it deals with those topics very well. And so I recommend this wholeheartedly. Again, this is approximately 29 minutes. But that's not all, because then we get a series of supplements that emerged that could be found elsewhere on other previous releases of this film, but we also have them here on this new Criterion release. The first of these is from 2015, and this is a one-on-one conversation with the writer or co-writer, David Leland, approximately 19 minutes. And so David Leland talks about maybe the inspiration or the circumstances that brought him into the participation with this particular project. He talks about Made in Britain, and how he maybe that informed or could indicate or foreshadow the type of approach that David Leland had to this particular story, and how his run at the story or his writing of the story had a certain hard edge to it, according to David Leland, in terms of a draft. And then that draft was then reviewed and then essentially reworked by Neil Jordan to, I don't know if soften is the right word, but perhaps to give more emphasis to the emotional arcs of the characters, let's put it that way. And so, and there's a very interesting way in which the working relationship is described between David Leland and Neil Jordan, about how Neil Jordan would ask him questions about what he thought of Neil Jordan's draft about 2/3 of the way done. And then that input and feedback from David Leland would then inspire Neil Jordan to essentially finish that particular version of what ended up being the final version of the film. And I think David Leland, too, in a very wonderful manner, he expresses his great joy in this type of working relationship, because he himself admits, or he acknowledges, that he really enjoys the collaborative aspect of the creative process. And he's using this example of the collaborative aspect or the collaborative process between himself and Neil Jordan as one of these examples. And I thought that was a really, really lovely way of portraying it, and that the art and the act of creation that David Leland has. And his contribution is very important and very key in terms of, as I say, the establishment of this multi-level, multi-tiered approach that was then also the basis of inspiration for Neil Jordan to do the work that he was able to do. And so this is a really great conversation. And he also talks about things that were his ideas, and also things that were Neil Jordan's ideas. And again, one of the ideas that David Leland expresses even now in this conversation is the mysterious aspect of the white rabbit, and then the pet shop, and then George buys the white rabbit. Why? What does this mean? And he acknowledges that this was probably one of Neil Jordan's ideas, but it works in the context of the film. It just works. It just seems to inhabit that space. It is what it is, and so one needs no further explanation. Again, in the context of the film, one can question it, one can wonder what it really means, what it signifies, etc. But it works in the context of the film, and so there is this balance between David Leland's initial approach, which was the hard-edged nature of the story, versus a type of romantic emotion that David Leland acknowledges that was probably more Neil Jordan's contribution. And indeed, we can see this. We can see that there is still a type of hard-edged nature to the story, especially when we consider the storyline vis-a-vis Simone, and also that plot arc dynamic, and also Mortwell, the Michael Caine character, and the noirish elements of the film, etc. A type of almost gangster underbelly aspects of the film. So I think it's a great type of collaborative work, and as I say, David Leland in a wonderful way acknowledges his joy at this collaborative process and again working with Neil Jordan. So all in all, a wonderful conversation. I'm so glad it can be part of this release. As I say, it may have been made available in other past releases, and we also have it available here. Also in that same vein, we have another conversation, this time with producer Stephen Woolley. And this is a conversation approximately 13 minutes, also described as being from 2015. And here we have his comments in this one-on-one interview in terms of how describing Neil Jordan's relationship with London, and how Neil Jordan, who isn't from London originally, is depicting London, which it's very much what I love this comparison. It's very much similar to the way that Michelangelo Antonioni tried to depict London in a very interesting way in Antonioni's work called Blow Up. And so there's an interesting aspect of how an artist, not necessarily from London originally, is depicting London in this stylized, very effective way, and that Neil Jordan and company have done in the landscape of Mona Lisa. So, and also there's a great comparison between Neil Jordan's work here and then John Boorman and Point Blank, and so that's a great comparison right there. And also the example once again is the nightlife at the cross section in King's Cross. What a great example this is. And also he mentions too the contribution, the very valuable contribution of David Leland, the idea of the hard-edged nature, and Michael Caine and what he brings, a type of recalling, say, Get Carter, and that type of echoing, and also that type of hard edge that we might have seen in works like, say, The Long Good Friday and the like. And so there's that maybe British gangster element, that hard-edged crime film element that is very much part of the character and makeup of a film like Mona Lisa. But again, we also acknowledge that there are other aspects at play as well. So again, a wonderful conversation here. Once again from 2015 with Stephen Woolley, approximately 13 minutes. It might have been made available in past releases, but once again, it's great that it's made available here as well. And then also to round out the supplements, we have a approximately 10-minute interview, or maybe interviews with Neil Jordan on the one hand, and also with Bob Hoskins on the other, and they're at the Cannes Film Festival in 1986. And as we know, this film enjoyed great success at such Cannes Film Festival, and so it's great to hear Neil Jordan's comments and his responses to these particular questions about the significance of this film Mona Lisa, and his version of the story. It's in essence a story about this particular man, the character of George, and his inability to understand this woman in his life, who is the Simone character, a man who is unable to understand this woman and who it is that this woman is. So what a wonderful way of describing it, because it really is about a film about misunderstandings and how people react to the discovery of such misunderstandings, a type of epiphany, if you will, that one is indeed wholly misunderstood the situation before this particular person. And also we have Bob Hoskins, too, interviewed in Cannes, and his approach to the character, his attempts at trying to discover the character and the like. And the development of it is very important because, as I say, the George character is key, and Bob Hoskins' portrayal and performance is magnificent. So, again, a wonderful blend, a wonderful mix of these conversations or interviews with these two gentlemen at the Cannes Film Festival. Please check this one out if you can as well. And then we have the fold-out, or the essay, which I have taken the liberty to remove for purposes of this video beforehand. Again, it's the fold-out type, and I'm not a fan of the fold-out type, but I am very much happy with the essay that's included. Once again, we have a contribution by Ryan Gilbey. Underground Errand is the name of the essay. This is a great essay. He makes great connections and reminds us of the, say, legacy of sort of British films and Bob Hoskins and Michael Caine, Long Good Friday, Get Carter, and Pennies from Heaven, etc. And also he's talking about the thematic concerns of the film, the importance of characters, the type of what the characters represent vis-a-vis, say, Mortwell or Simone or George, etc. This is such a great, and also the career trajectory of Neil Jordan, where this film fits, the context and the significance of the film Mona Lisa in that particular trajectory and other aspects. What a great essay. Please check it out if you can. Again, Underground Errand. And I should point out that I adore this particular artwork design, and I should say that this is art director Sarah Habibi, Eric Skillman, illustrations Alice X. Zhang, designer Eric Skillman. These sketches of the particular characters here are splendid, absolutely splendid. I love these. And then, of course, we have the renditions that form the basis for the cover art design right here. What a great! This is a type of drawing or depiction, artistic depiction of, perhaps it's one of the scenes that takes place in the car between the main characters of George and Simone, and we see it right here. What a lovely, and the colors that are depicted, and the way that light and shadow are captured as well. And there's also a sense of warmth, because we think that, or we understand that there is this type of emotional warmth, or the semblance of emotional warmth, shall we say, between these two characters. And I also love the detail of Mona Lisa, the font that seems to be trying to evoke or mimic the font that's used for the title that we see in the opening title sequence. And I love that, and I love the detail of the O. It's slightly off center, and that's a wonderful detail. Very, very well done indeed. So I think this is great. I think this is great. What a wonderful release from Criterion. It's great to see this film reemerge in the collection, and what a reemergence this is, and what a way to reemerge with this wonderful new Blu-ray. So please check it out if you can. I should point out finally that the earlier DVD had the commentary track, but it didn't have any of the other supplements. So if you are interested, I think this would be a great possibility or option for anyone who might be looking to add this film, Mona Lisa, in your collection. So, my dear friends, that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. I very, very much appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.